So there's a buzzword that's catching on in society, and it's called DEI. It's actually not a word; it's an acronym, and it stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But in this particular talk, I'm only going to talk about the D and the I because the E is just way too complicated. That's the equity part. I saw a meme a few years ago, and it was a cartoon, and its purpose was to explain the equity part. You've probably seen it, right? There were people standing on boxes, looking over a fence, and the goal was to explain the difference between equity and equality, right? And it was explained that the equality means sameness and equity means fairness. And I had two thoughts about this meme. My first thought is if it takes a cartoon to explain a complex concept or idea, we've already lost the battle on explaining, that more deeply. And my second thought was that the cartoon actually did more damage to the discussion than repair. Because I'm wondering, like many of you, why did that little guy get more boxes to stand on to see over the fence? Because real life just isn't like that. And some would say he needs to just figure it out. Like most of us are forced to just figure out life and challenges, right? And maybe he did actually go get the boxes on his own. But the message I got from looking at the cartoon was that society should provide the boxes. And that's kind of where the debate begins. Who should provide leverage or who should give us a leg up so that we have opportunities to thrive economically? So you can see how discussing the E could make this a much longer conversation, a deeper conversation. I also believe that the E is the number one reason that the whole DEI subject is politicized, how it became a woke issue or conservative versus a liberal issue. I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole, not today and not in this discussion. I could do an entire talk on just the E. Um, but I do want to tell you why I think that the D and the I are so vital, so important to the fabric of society. Because if we didn't put systems in place to force us to live, breathe, work, and play in the same spaces, we would never do it on our own. We would continue to just dwell in the comfortable, safe environments where everyone looks the same, speaks the same language, and believe the same ideology. And we are not forced to we aren't challenge ourselves to, look at life differently than what we're used to and become accustomed to. Diverse spaces, they challenge our belief systems and our perceptions. And we no longer have to assume when we can just easily have, discussions with people who don't look like us, speak like us, and think like us. Laws and agendas, they were created to force us to move into these uncomfortable spaces where we'll grow and we'll thrive. Initiatives such as affirmative action, school integration, fair housing, equal opportunity, so on and so on. All those things that have made us as a society uncomfortable. And if you believe that we would just do that on our own, move into these uncomfortable spaces, then you're looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. And I don't know what to tell you. So I was born in 1964 at the height of the civil rights movement. So I personally have experiences to have a full grasp on how essential diversity or inclusion are. They've actually helped me. They've helped me grow, personally and economically, and it just has given me a better life. But here's a hard truth to swallow. Whenever one of these diversity agendas was pushed forward, it was always blacks being moved into white spaces, whether it was schools, workplaces, extracurricular functions such as sports, music, or advanced education. And it was never the other way around. We were moved into spaces that made, the natives of these environments extremely uncomfortable. And I often say that because of this, black people have become more comfortable around whites than whites are around blacks. We learned the habits, the grammars, the terminology, customs, and courtesies of white culture. And we learned to assimilate into these environments and habitats that we were suddenly thrust into. And whites were not pushed into black environments. because of some perceived fear for safety and the mere reluctance to do so. So, why has DEI become a workplace initiative? Because we spend more than a third of our lives in the workplace around other people. And as a result of this, it may be the only time that we get to have experiences with people of a different culture that's, different from our own. It is the only opportunity to build relationships and build friendships with people, of different races. I've met white people who have fully matured and who have no black friends. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not calling them out or saying anything derogatory. It just is what it is because of the environments that they're in. White neighborhoods, white workplaces. And if no blacks or other ethnicities go into those places, that's all you're going to have. But I wonder to myself, how can they have a full human experience without exploring cultures and habits of other races in a more deep and meaningful way? I can tell you that I have many white friends who I love and admire, and if not for meeting them at work, I may have never found them and been able to add depth and fulfillment to my own life. Conversely, I've met black people who haven't had the opportunity, or let's say the desire, to work and play in white spaces that could allow them to broaden their own ideas, their own thinking, and the perceptions about whites that might eliminate preconceived ideas and prejudices that might limit the opportunities for advancement. And these interactions could also affirm their ideas as well. So when it comes to opportunity, one conservative thought is just pick the best and the brightest or the most qualified person. Let's not look at color. But I say pick the best and the brightest and most qualified people, but also consider what differences a person may have that can add to the value of human experience in the workplace, where people will have good fortune to enhance their own lives and make connections that's going to add to their growth and human development. That's one of the problems that I have, and this is controversial. It's one of the problems that I have personally with teenage black youth attending HBCUs or historically black colleges and universities. Because if you were raised in an all black environment, with black family, black friends, and then you make the choice to start your adulthood in the same type of environment, in the same education based environment, you could actually stunt your growth in human development. But at the same time, I do love HBCUs for how they can be a place for black youth to gain a better and more true education about their history, about their people. And in addition, they build stronger bonds within the race. I did one semester at an HBCU institution, and I found it profoundly helped me gain a greater love for my people. It impacted my view on race and racism. But let's go back to the workplace. If you are white and you oppose diversity and inclusion initiatives, then answer this. What are the methods do you have to build bonds with people of other ethnicities? What steps and measures will you take to ensure that you add this value and human experience to your life? Because as I said earlier, if I had to depend on you doing it on your own, I'm not confident that you would. I'm not confident that anyone would actually. So I'm going to end my thoughts with this. Let's not look at diversity and inclusion as a negative or as something that's, unfairly selects people solely based on color. Look at it as something that, in its purity, has a goal to make our lives and our social construct more superior and more virtuous. And I'll leave you with this quote. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences.